because the way that she doesn't do this in a narrative, like a story, because she does it the way that she does it, more like academic. That's what's happening to me. Is I'm getting it, like she has so much rich stuff here. It's hard for me to like get, because the way that she doesn't do this in a narrative, you know. All right. Yeah, I don't know if y'all have if you having that same experience with how, hearing her lectures and everything and reading her book, but I am. All right. Okay. All right. Now everything is set up. Last thing I gotta do is just turn on AI. Oh, okay. AI is up. All right, y'all. So let's get started here. Okay, so um right now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna share my screen and we're gonna actually listen to like this chapter. So I'm gonna slow it down. It's gonna take about 13 minutes.
Create together. LTCBU, Chapter 2 Utaraatibu WA Kutizama * African philosophy and worldview. The African universe is conceived as a unified spiritual totality. We speak of the universe as a cosmos, and we mean that all being within it is organically interrelated and interdependent. The European materialized universe does not view the cosmos. The essence of the African cosmos is spiritual reality. That is its fundamental nature, its primary essence. Realities are not conceived of as being in irreconcilable opposition, as they are in European thought, and spirit is not separate from matter. Both spiritual and material being are necessary in order for meaningful reality to exist. While spiritual being gives force and energy to matter, material being gives form to spirit, allowing it to manifest. The acquisition of wisdom and knowledge depends to a significant degree on being able to apprehend spirit in matter. This crucial difference in European and African thought helps to explain the specialness of African spiritness. The mode or determining structure of the European worldview is that of power, control, and destruction. Realities are split into pairs. Conventionally, one of these becomes valued, while its converse is understood as lacking value. One is good and the other is bad. It then becomes necessary, valued behavior, to destroy one, the bad, while the other ascends to supremacy. What they consider to be the human response to the universe, for instance, is separated into reason and emotion. Reason then becomes the valued aspect of humanity. It must be used to control or obviate emotion in order for us to become properly human. The African conception is quite different. In it, spirit, emotion, feeling, and connectedness are the essence of humanness, the grounding of the intellect. The way of the world, Kiswahili. Other opposing pairs, in the European view, are knowledge/opinion, objective/subjective, science/religion, mind/body, male/female, man/boy, and so forth. To the African, on the other hand, the universe is made up of complementary pairs. These pairs are forces, or principles of reality that are interdependent and necessary to each other in a unified system. The divine essence, for instance, is both female and male and therefore able to reproduce itself. This continual recreation is symbolized mythically in the form of male and female twins that then pair in order to continue the process. The determining mode of the African worldview is harmony. The goal is that of discovering the point of harmonious interaction, so that interferences become neutralized, allowing constructive energy to flow and to be received. In the African worldview, the human and the divine are not hopelessly separated, as they are in European theology, where the divine is defined as being the negation of all that is human. It requires a miracle for them to interact. In Africa, the human is divine and the demonstration of this unity is the height of spiritual experience, as the spirits manifest themselves in us, spirit possession. To the African, the sacred and the profane are close and can be experienced as unity. All of this is so because of the multi-dimensional nature of the African universe. Phenomena and events are understood on many different levels at once. The African universe is alive and rich. It is filled with myriad possibilities. It is a phenomenal universe. The African worldview is spiritual. All that is real is conceived of in terms of spirit. Spirit is the foundation of all being, rendering the universe sacred. The universe was created, it is continually recreated, by a divine act. We participate in that act as we perform rituals in imitation of Septipi, the first occasion, and the forces of nature, principles of force. Through association with this sacred universe, divinely being, Olojima and the Orisa, Onyem and the Abuzum, and so created, life itself becomes sacred and a most precious gift to be cherished, preserved, passed on and revitalized. It is to be lived to its fullest. The African Asalai. According to Leonard Barrett, the supreme value in terms of the African worldview is to live life robustly. That is, to live life with as much energy and as forcefully as we can. Much of African spiritual activity, therefore, involves the attempt to strengthen our force vitale or life force. It is the spirits, forces, and the ancestors who have the spiritual power to strengthen our force vitale, and so through sacrifice, offering, and ritual, we ask them to help us in this way. Sacrifice is a symbolic statement of the reciprocal nature of cosmic relationship. All beings within the cosmos are influenced and they, in turn, have the ability to exert influence. Everything is force. We take from the spirits, ancestors, nature, Nananom, Igan, Bakolu, Orisa, Abuzum, Voodoo, Nkisi, and so we must give back to them. This conception, so essential in African spiritual thought and practice, is radically different from European theology. Through sacrifice we honor, and therefore strengthen the spirits, and the ancestors. We keep them strong so that they will continue to be able to keep us strong. Actually, we are them and they are us. The relationship between the human and the divine, the Oran, heavenly, and allied, earthly, spheres, is one of interdependence. The spirits need us, just as we need them, just as spirit needs matter to give it form, and matter needs spirit to give it force, being and reality. The relationship is cosmic. It is all one, a single totality. Everything is everything. Life, events, and phenomena derive meaning, value or significance through relationship to an organic whole. The family or community is understood as just such an entity. Since nothing of significance is merely physical, the community itself becomes a modern physical reality. We say that the African family includes the dead, the living, and the yet unborn. Its significance is multidimensional, and it is through ancestor communion that its wholeness gives meaning and definition to the family members. In addition, the philosophical conception 9 of sacred time, knowledge of being of ancestor communion helps to explain the African concept. Spiritual realities are timeless, that is, they are not limited by the ordinary categories of time and space. Through its association with spirit, matter becomes ontologically related to the eternal. Sacred time is perceived cyclically, and so linear categories and the limited perceptions of past, present, and the future are eliminated in the sacred life. These are terms applicable only in the profane, mundane, and secular world. That is why John S. Beatty is mistaken when he implies that reverence for the Zamani means looking toward the past. Through sacred time, life and time are continually regenerated, space is expanded, the eternal is achieved. Time beyond time. Timeless time. What is referred to as past, present, or future in linear terms, are not separated, but are joined in a phenomenal and sacred unity. This is made possible through the extraordinary mechanism of ritual drama. Sacred and spirit does not die. If we continually make that philosophical statement through ritual, if we remember, then the physically deceased members of the family continue to be part of that family, and we are assured of immortality. In order for the family to be healthy, its continuity and wholeness must be continually experienced, and it is through the ancestors that we keep in touch with our sacred origins. We must perform the ritual of ancestor communion daily, a ritual. Spiritual union and communication. This act testifies to the continued spiritual existence of the physically deceased as they manifest themselves materially. The spirits of the ancestors take physical form in the new babies that are born to the community. Babies are therefore not new, but represent the timeless regeneration of the human. The elders, panin, of the community do not die, but upon physical death are reborn into the spiritual realm as ancestors, nananomisomorpho. African life is replete with ritual. It states interrelationship with other beings in the universe. Ritual sacrifice symbolizes the principles of interdependence and reciprocity. It is through ritual that the unexplainable is understood, and that chaos is made to be ordered within the logic of tradition. It is through ritual that trauma is avoided, crises dealt with and overcome, and difficult transitions are perceived as passages between stages of normal growth and development. In ritual, Africans combine life with artistic expression. Ritual is, in a sense, the ultimate philosophical expression of the African world view, for it is the modality within which the unity of the human and the divine is expressed, in which the unity of spirit and matter is perceived, and in which the eternal moment is achieved. When we perform rituals as our ancestors did, we become our ancestors, and thereby transcend the boundaries of ordinary space and time, and the limitations of separation that they impose. When we call the spirits and they enter our bodies, we symbolize in our being the joining of, and therefore communication between, two spheres of the universe, the spirit world and the earthly. And rebirth symbolized in our. The theme of death relationship to the ancestors contributes to the philosophy that presents us with the eternal cycle of life. This theme is inherent in all ritual drama. It is the philosophy that has been the source of our continuing life force and vitality. It is this philosophy that remains the indomitable strength of a people plagued with recent periods of political powerlessness. In ritual drama we die and are reborn, just as youth die and are reborn as adults, and as elders die and are reborn as ancestors, or as ancestors are given new life, becoming newborn members of the group. Revitalized. Values and beliefs in ritual we are energized and are redefined, reaffirmed and reinterpreted, six at once giving them added viability and sacralizing their new form. As we shall see later, through ritual our spirit souls are replenished. Ritual drama gives birth to music and dance, our attempts to express African essence, cosmic beingness, or soul. Rhythm, philosophically, must be understood as NTU or universal life force to find it is to be in tune with the universe. The sacred role of the drummer is to find the universal life force and 11. Drum is Africa. To communicate it to us. As Leonard Barrett tells us, the every worldview generates a set of metaphysical definitions result when alien metaphysical conceptions are injected into as reference points. Gross distortions and misconceptions and African world views are so different, in such crucial aspects, that explanations of the African worldview that use European definitions are blatantly absurd. The implications are, of course, intentionally political and ideological. The imposition of European conceptions in explanation of African culture is a form of European cultural imperialism. The African worldview is characterized by unity, harmony, spirituality, European world and organic interrelationship. The view is characterized by compartmentalization, isolation, separation, control, power relationships, conflict, tension, of the spiritualized universe, and mechanical, non-organic relationship. As a result, traditional African society is a microcosm of the natural cosmic environment, in which people are actively and intimately involved and with which they identify. Whereas European society is an unnatural order seeking only technological efficiency and control. It takes form within an artificially materialized universe, in which people experience painful alienation, both from the modes in which they are forced to function, the disconnection of rigid bureaucracy, and from each other. One difference of paramount importance is that between the European and African modes of thought and expression. The European mind is literal, while African deep thought is expressed symbolically. African culture is filled with symbols and symbolic behavior that reflect a spiritual worldview. If these symbols are approached literally, African behavior makes no sense in the thought forms of European academia and European religious categories. In Eurocentric terms, we become primitives who act like children because we do not understand the nature of the real world. Why do we set out portions of food for people who are not there? Because we are affirming the necessity, value and reality of their spiritual presence, statement that can be made materially because of the relationship between spirit and matter. Our ancestors certainly is one T here. Why should a carver give an offering to the spirit of a tree from which he cuts? He does this because he is part of a culture that perceives the interrelationship and interdependence of all beings within nature and the natural universe. If we take or destroy, we must give or rebuild, for their spiritual unity that joins us all, and if we do not ritualize this truth, we will end by greed and exploitation continues to rape the environment in order to fuel the machinery of international capitalism. We Africans, in imitation of Europe, and in denial of the African worldview, are busy creating a social order in imitation of a non-African way, ignoring the essential principle of reciprocity, forgetting what the African universe has great depth and many dimensions. Its order is sacred. The parts within it relate in such a way that each is a reflection of the whole. That sacred order is constantly being communicated to us through natural phenomena, through life, through experiences, through nature and natural events. A tree can therefore be understood as a manifestation of the sacred, a storm as an expression of divinity. The presence of a river or a mountain can make our environment a sacred space. They can be shrines. They are ideal locations for ritual, prayer, since in their proximity we are able to transcend to sacred time and space. African symbolism seeks the essence of things. We are not satisfied with superficialities. The symbolic mode makes it possible for us to perceive the manifestations of spirit, to feel and know spirit moving in matter as energy. The symbolic nature of the African worldview allows us to apprehend, through metaphor, the ambiguities of phenomena existence. The logic of rationalism does not do that. Through the symbolic, the universe can be approached in all of its richness and potential. Just think about what it is reduced to by those who perceive only on a literal and material level. 13. The Abibimambo, child of Africa, in his or her being, represents the embodiment of the confrontation of two divergent worldviews, a spiritual ethos inheriting a sacred, cosmic worldview, forced to adjust to a materialistic society in inhuman circumstance. We must raise materialism. Again, the question of what happens when the spiritual ethos of a people of African origin is entrapped, injured, abused, raped and exploited by an oppressive, materialistic society, the culture of which seeks to dominate them. Do we lose our integrity? Does our ethos and worldview become distorted so that we are no longer recognizable as African? Do we indeed become imitation Europeans? Or is it possible that a legacy of powerful spiritual conceptions, the African worldview, and spiritness, the African Asalai, give us the ability to revitalize ourselves in spite of great suffering and imminent devastation. Is it possible that our souls are continually replenished by NTU, the universal life force, through the connecting life rituals that we recreate together?
Right, I say, oh, we give thanks to Mama Marimba, Ani, and what she's blessed us with this particular text of "Let the Circle Be Unbroken." I say, Grand Rising, Alafia to everyone who's just joined. Peace, peace, peace. So I'm trying to get this out the way. All right, y'all. We're gonna go ahead and let's dive in. Oh, look, I'll put something on my screen. I'm trying to minimize. Okay, there you are. So actually, let's go. I kind of want to go ahead and start answering these concepts, but yeah. How do y'all feel about it? Do you want to dive right into these questions, or do you want to dive in going back over a review of what we just listened to? All right, we're gonna go through a review.
Either way is fine.
What'd you say?
Either way is fine.
Okay. All right. We're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pull up my notes here, and we'll start over in review. I'm loving Marimba Ani just because like she's so thorough, and like I said, every little piece of information is like it unfolds, right? Like it's like a packet, and then it's like one little line. So we might get stuck and revolve around some points here, which is cool. All right, if anybody wants to, who's new to the group and everything, you could just jump in. You got any, you can either raise your hand or you just start speaking. All right.
Peace, Baba. This is Sincere.
Hey, peace, Baba, Sincere.
Yeah, man. I appreciate the invite this morning, and I'm always a fan of the African worldview. And anytime I get an opportunity to hear someone's perspective as on the African worldview and on the European worldview, I try to tune in or read it or grab it so I can have it and process it for myself. For me, when I think about the re-Africanization process, the journey that I'm on, it's important that I go there, right? That sets the tone and the foundation for what happened to me, what happened to us, right? And what do I need to do or undo to go forward, right? So, in Black psychology, the African worldview was like the part of the process of like the cosmology, all of that. It just sets the tone. So I'm excited to actually be a part, just listen and be a part of this, and then add on as I can throughout the conversation. There's another person that I would love to suggest to add on in addition to the worldview, and that's Baba Kobe Cambone, who also mentions who strongly talks about the African worldview as well. Again, these are all psychologists, Black psychologists, or members of the Association of Black Psychology, where they hone in on that African worldview process. And I'll stop right there.
Bob, can you say his name one more time? I had to get on my
Yeah, sure. Kobe, Kobie, Cambone, Kambon, and he has several books. But the book, I had an opportunity. They had a workshop with him down in Richmond before he became an ancestor. The book that I love of his is called Cultural Misorientation.
His brother, his son lives in Ghana and is like a
linguist. No, so you're talking about that's Kamal Cambone.
Okay, Kamal Cambone. Okay.
This is Kobe Cambone, who's a Black psychologist. Used to be down in Florida. Went to.
They're not related.
They're not related. No, Bob.
Okay, got you.
Nope.
All right, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yep.
No, I'm gonna definitely check him out.
Yeah, man. I mean, anytime. So the worldview piece, man, is like helps me understand like what how do we get to this rugged individualism? You know what I'm saying? How do we get to it's just about me? When it's not about me, it's about us. You see what I'm saying? So for me, it's like, nah, I'm not. I have to start thinking more of the collective, right? Because a lot of people operate just from, well, I'm moving forward. I'm doing this. I got this. That's not the case,
Right.
right? So even with the egg bay, right? It's like the beauty of that orientation, right? The beauty of community, right? And this is where this is the root of us as African people, right? So, and then when I think about, you know, the I, right, and the individuality, and how that's strongly pushed in Western culture so much, right? Like, we got people that could just sit in their neighborhood and not be in community. So you got to ask yourself, like, what happened, right? And how did we get to that point where we just watch other people suffer, especially in this day and age, right? Like you see more and more stuff happening in the world, right? With the snaps being cut and all that stuff, right? So we're gonna need community more than ever now. We got to go back to the source, right? We got to go back to us, right? We got to go back to how I know a lot of churches are doing things and trying to so we can support the community and support us because it's going to get challenging for us. And this is what we used to, and this is what we got to get back to. So
I think thank you, Bob, and I think that it is like this type of cycle and the rituals that Marimba Ani speaking about in this section, that what this is doing is putting us in that environment to remember who and what we are. If we were to go on the same trajectory of isolationism, individualism, materialism, we already know where that would end us up, because all we have to do is look to Korea and Japan. They have the technology we have, probably more technology than what we have. They don't have the crime issues, but they have high number of suicides, like incredibly high. They focus more on work, on the machine system. I would say that they're the epitome of this machine system. They just don't have as much. They're just not as violent and don't have as much racism because the racial dynamic is different there. I don't know what it would be if it looked like a United States or London or France or Paris or something. But yeah, I think we see it in their culture, because their culture, the reason why the suicide rate is so high, and then like a lot of people are alone just with their technology, and that's it. And on the inside, they're dying.
facts, yeah.
Like I
So,
don't
so,
think that this is sustainable.
yeah.
It's
Well, it's
trajectory.
not. It's not sustainable.
Yeah,
It's not sustainable. We know that that's not sustainable. So I also think that that's important. That's why we got to return back to the source.
I said.
You know what I'm saying? Like we got to get back to and how do so the question is how are we undoing that? Right? Like when we're on our journey, right? There's a saying that says do, undo, then redo. Right? So for me, like I'm in the undoing stuff.
I
I'm
said.
undoing all the harm that's been done, all the hurt, all the disappointment, all the Western stuff, right? And now, what am I replacing that, or what am I redoing it with? African principles, African theory, and she talks about that N2 piece at
Yeah,
the end, right? I
yeah.
just went to an N2 conference, right? I
Mhm.
just went to an N2 conference at Bowie State University a couple of weeks ago, right? Which was beautiful, right? It's a psychotherapy technique that uses African principles. So we have to find African principles and agreements and practices and worldview technology to help us return back to the source.
But yeah, it's interesting because Into is actually in our group's name, Bantu.
Yeah, Banny. That's where it comes from. Banny. Yep.
Because you'll hear them say Abantu.
Mm-hmm.
I just started putting it together because I said, well, what's the Ba or the Aba or the Baba?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get later into the Ma. So these are the sounds of a child will make when talking about the parental units.
Mm.
Right? Da, da, mama, baba. Right? That's why we get these words. So we have here the parental unit, or here we say ba, father, or something, but it's a parental unit, the parenting unit of the Intu, of the Netaru, of the divinities, of the spirit forces of nature, you know. And for a people to call themselves that, right? It tells you that they don't call themselves like America call itself after a man, right? Like this man named America, so we're gonna call ourselves Americans, or this person is the king, so we call ourselves no. Like we're the people of spirit.
And the people of balance and harmony.
I say.
Right. So you can't have so where there's a man, there's a woman. Where there's a woman, there's a man. There's a complementary force, right? There's not just men. Right? There's not just, you know what I'm saying? And the treatment of women is also important in that worldview process, right? Because there's balance.
Right.
Yep. So we have to just really, man, that spiritual thing that you're talking about, like we really got to get back to that being the root and the foundation to who and what we are.
And it come right here to our notes. Explores being as defined by African metaphysics, existence as relational rather than individual. And so we're gonna find that come up in this first part over and over, right? The idea of universe, or the idea of cosmos, right? So first she takes it to this idea of universe, and what she would say universe is unified spiritual totality, and that's cosmos, okay? And that this thing that she's talking about, the cosmos, is organically interrelated and interdependent. Like, so literally the way that like I think of it as a huge organism. Like think of the universe as a huge organism. All the galaxies, planets, solar systems, black holes, everything. And that there is no space. When we think about space, like emptiness, there is no emptiness. Everything is something. That's what physics is starting to figure out. Is what we think is like empty space don't exist, because this concept of the interrelated and interdependentness of it, and this African concept that the Yoruba call, which we can come up later, Odulamare. So we understood within our sciences, we understood science. We understood the nature of reality. That's what science is supposed to be about. Science is the study of the nature of reality.
We understood science because we are science.
I said.
Right. So we understand these things because we are. It says there's an old Kemetic proverb. It says, as above, so below. Right. So what we see above is what we are below. Right. And on a different scale and in a different. Right. So, the African cosmology is rooted in spirit.
I said.
Right. And that's what, oh man. So, Baba Adamoli used to say that all the time. Like, I listen to him, you know what I'm saying? And we, as we chop it up sometimes about certain topics, and he goes through the whole African cosmology. Again, that's dealing with the worldview, right? How do we see our origins in the world, right? There's no Darwinism. There's no Big Bang Theory. Don't just start from that, right? Like, that's not it, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not it, right? Like, everything is interconnected and interrelated, right? And it builds and adds off of one another, right? And again, even when she talks about the creator, right? Inside the creator is a male and female force, right? So we see two things occupying the same space, right? So and it's able to reproduce itself, right? We don't learn, you don't get that from from their definition of version of from the Western concept of religion, right? The mere fact that they call it religion is something totally is problematic, right? So yeah.
I found some interesting. I was in a conversation, and Octavia Butler came up. I was like last night, and I was talking about her book, Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents, the
Mhm.
Collection Earthseed series. And she has this concept called God is change. And the main character is, of course, if y'all are familiar with it, this book is about a girl named Lauren Olamina, who is in a dystopian future. This was written in like the late 80s, 90s of the 2020s and 2030s in America. And she leaves. She's the daughter of a pastor, but she leaves, her community and starts out to create a community, to create a village, and she creates a religion, what she calls a religion. And they don't even really believe in a Western God, but she uses the term anyway. Uh, it's really kind of interesting. So the way that she creates it is by just observing what's around her. And she said, if I can't observe it, I'm not going to put it in the belief system. So anyway, she comes up with one of these statements, and here's one of them. It says, "Create no images of God, except the images that God has provided. They are everywhere, in everything. God is change. Seed to tree, tree to forest, rain to river, river to sea, grubs to bees, bees to swarm. From many one, forever uniting, growing, dissolving, forever changing. The universe is God's self-portrait."
Mm.
And so we see here from Octavia, Mama Octavia, she's tapping into something deeply African, right? And that was something Marimba Ani spoke about before, about this thread of African, I'm gonna use the word Africanness, this thread of Africanness within Africa, within the different communities practicing Africa, and that thread is within us here. I say that
Yeah.
Africa is in us, it's in our DNA, it's in our blood, it's in our energy, our spirit, right?
Even how we greet ourselves, we greet one another, right? So the first time we say, "Hey man, what's up? How you good?" Right? We
Right.
checking in, right? That's check in. But then the next thing is a follow is, "How your mama and them? How's everybody else? How your family doing?
How's your people?
How your people doing?" Right? So we could follow that language, that process of development in terms of checking in with the individual that's in front of you, right? And then checking in with your family and everybody else, work and all that other stuff, right? We're not just focusing on the individual, right? Even in our thought, in our language, and how we connect with one another, right? So,
And I think that, and here we can see it right here, both spiritual and material being are necessary in
mm,
order for meaningful reality to exist.
mm,
So one of the questions that she ends in, at the end, is she talks about, like, what happens when the people are forced to live and survive within a culture based upon a worldview that's opposed to their ethos. She ends the first chapter like that. And
mm,
she ends again asking us questions.
mm.
Do we indeed become imitation Europeans? Does our
And so,
worldview become distorted so that we no longer are recognizable as African, right? Or is it possible that a legacy of powerful spiritual conceptions, the African worldview and spiritness, the African Asili, give us the ability to revitalize ourselves despite of great suffering and imminent devastation?
so that goes hand in hand with the work of Kobe Cambone with the cultural misorientation, right? And one of the things that he talks about is how we're showing up along that. The cultural misorientation is the process of what you're talking about, is where we are not who we are, not who we are born to be, right? And how we go along this trajectory, how we go along the journey of life, and we are constantly taught to be other than ourselves. And when we find out who we are, then we're trying to return back. But that's what the cultural misorientation is. We are misorientated into the culture of who and what we are, right? And that's the root of us, right? So how do we return back to that? And that's the re-Africanization process. What we all are along a journey, right? And one of the things, I'll say this real quick, which I thought was beautiful, is that when I went to Rio de Janeiro last year, right? And one of the things that people don't realize is that, you know, in Rio de Janeiro, there's African spirituality that has been practiced uninterrupted.
I say.
You see what I'm saying? So there's a different, it looks different in terms of how they were impacted by oppression, but they were able to practice that uninterrupted from Europeans, right? And it's dope, man, because they got what they call contemplate, right? So we can go around the world and see pockets or maroons of spaces and places where we are practicing our culture, our way, right? We have what we call in the United States maroons, right? We have different spaces and places where we are able to practice and continue to be who and what we are. Lafayette, Baba, how are you? I see Baba the moment.
Well, I'm so pleased. I'm just so pleased the nature of this discussion, and I just want to add one thing.
Yes, Bob.
That the fact that this is occurring, that we are on.
I think he froze up. Hey, Bob, you froze up. I cut off the screen share, cut off my camera to cut a whole thing.
Yeah.
Are part of a continuous discussion. I remember
you cut off. We
back
couldn't hear you after you started. We couldn't hear you after you started. Could you start?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I have to do something? I don't know.
You're fine. You're fine. If you could just start over for me.
Well, everyone should be alert that by doing this event, by participating in this event, we are sustaining the African survival thrust. And that, you know, the Oyimbo,
I said,
it's the main thing that he has been able to do is to mystify us with demonstrations of violence, and that the entire voyage was violence. And when you got to Barbados, they began a process of seasoning. And when you landed on the continental shore, South Carolina, Charleston, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, the seasoning had to acclimate you to the environment. And they didn't provide no shoes, and it was snow. What happened is that we were taught that we had no history, we came from nowhere, we could learn nothing, and could only be worked like beasts. And this was the dominant projected philosophy of the super rich and the king. Now, because they told us, it became law in the 1600s that we could not read and study. We did anyway. What happened is every step they took, the Africans adjusted so that they could maintain the core relationship with one another, which is what allowed us to not become the beast of burden. And so all these years, a major element of why we are able to do this today is in the 70s. After we had declared Black Power and they knew we were going to fight for it, what was the instrument that began to openly express Black community? it was conferences like what Oriola just mentioned, CB, Council of Independent Black Institutions, National Black Political Convention, all kinds of opportunities to come together and dialogue and to actually define freedom and exercise liberty in creating institutions. And I now know, because I talked the other day with Baba Imhotep from, I forgot PLM, Race First. What we have to realize is that all of these are expressions of the continuing thrust for freedom and resistance since the 1600s. The Prince Hall Masons came about because the Africans enslaved and free in Boston wanted to have organization for their purposes. And they started it. All of the different congregations of the different churches is part of this same thrust. And now, because of what Marimba Ani has done, and Kobi Kambon, all of this, I'm seeing now. When I met Queen Mother Moore back in the early 70s, she had been working on this since before my parents was born. And my grandfather and my great-grandfather was Garveyites. And so I'm able to see that the real thrust of what happened in the 60s was it came above ground. It had been underground, only underground. And there were things that we did that we need to go back and study to see how we got to the point where now we have an institution. I remember in the 80s, before these devices that we're using existed, as they were being discussed by the people who were designing prototypes. And in one of the discussions, as I was a consultant on a project for the Chase Bank, when they were beginning to use interactive, computerized and video, they came into the discussion, well, what is about the Black people? Do you think they'll be able to adjust? I said, we adjust everything else. Can you imagine if they said, well, we won't have the Black people use the iPhone? We would have figured something out, you see. And the only issue in my mind right now is the progression of the numbers studying the African worldview and using the powers of the African worldview. It's going to only increase, because I think hip hop has reached a point where it's got to fulfill something. You know, the message is not enough. It's no longer the top 10 because the code is bullshit. And so the things that we're discussing in these forums need to, I think that your generation is ready to move to the higher level. I know my generation resisted because there were a lot of Black people who, I'm not going to read Kobe Kambon. Who is this? Donnie Richards, what's she talking about? Oh, no. She don't really recognize that was a Christian message. The whole thing is our message, all of it. The thing that they did that messed me up personally was because I believed in the 1960s. I started high school in 1960, and it was still Jim Crow in the North. And I believed that when they said, y'all don't have no history. Well, okay, well, we're going to have to find out something, how, they just must have come out of nowhere. Well, I came in the 60s to find out that we did have a history. And I did dare to go to lectures and hear the word. And so this is what y'all got to see, that this is what's going to be really amazing. I would love to see it in the future. You know how we use the analogy, you're standing on the shoulders of the generations before you.
Benny.
Well, y'all are great height and great strength, rooted strength. And so the generation that's coming on you is going to be up high, you see. And you will be able to look back and see, and you look forward and see. And so that's why I'm going to keep quiet, because I love the quality of the discussion. This is what Chancellor Williams, John Henry Clark, all of them wanted to know, what is the quality of the discussion of these people of the new generation? And I am proud of what I'm hearing.
So I just wanted to say one other thing, Baba, to the group. I mean, our ancestors have done with this African worldview piece, right? And what Baba Ademola was saying in terms of knowing your history. This African worldview was created or developed or established for us so that we can start teaching our children from the African worldview, right? Our children can be orientated to know the collective, to know the community, to know the spirit, right? To know the origins of the cosmos started with you. And then when you see the symbolism of what's inside of you, you can see the symbolisms above, right?
That's right.
So that you can connect with that, right? It gets me excited just to think about if I was given that as a child.
And that's what we have to realize when we're doing rites.
Man.
Like Baba Akindele was saying about the cosmos. You see, that would be taught in to the youth. That's the truth. You should know that the cosmos begins at the surface of your skin.
Manny.
And goes all the way out, all the way beyond the wall, beyond the national boundaries, beyond the sky limit. The airplanes can't go that far.
Manny.
So, and you got to know that for everything out, there's an end. And so inside you, there's a microscopic cosmos. Now, our children should know that that's not optional. That's not because Jesus Christ died for your sins. Some of the things that about what is defined as spirit, we've got to be careful, because religion is different from spirit. And a religion that requires a child to believe that they were born in sin and thus are condemned from birth, how can you build up any kind of self-worth? Because if to say self-worth is to deny what you've been indoctrinated to. And that's, so some of the things are unlearning. I had to unlearn in 1967, unlearn how to be a Tom, because that was how I got far. I integrated very easily because I had learned as a boy how to get along with white people. And it was you know, their journey was to how to integrate with us, and had to come to see over the years. But now there's no need for our children to have to. Well, they y'all didn't learn how to kowtow for Jim Crow. You know, you didn't have to unlearn that. You might have seen somebody do it, but you didn't do it. And those things, because it was a kowtow mentality. And I look at some of my age mates, and certainly some older, who they want to act like this what we're doing. Oh, y'all shouldn't do that on Zoom. Oh no, you the CIA might listen. Well, they listened to Malcolm, and Malcolm's word got over. It went longer than theirs. J. Edgar Hoover and the Douglas, the Dulles brothers are dead. You see,
True.
And J. Edgar Hoover, there should be some understanding of how these people set the thing up. And a big thing with black people was because black people was at all levels of American society and establishment as it was going on. After the Civil War, it was a remarkable thing, the stunning rate at which African people got involved in the deepest systems of the country. Well, at that time, because the main identifier was the color of your skin, but there were white, and then was the bright, high yellow, and those people would often school their children. You can't bring nobody darker than a brown paper bag in here. And so they wanted to filter out the black. It had not been filtered out when J. Edgar Hoover, who was the lead director of the CIA, I mean the FBI, he got his start persecuting Marcus Garvey.
Mm-hmm.
And he was black in terms of the one drop. Oh, he had more than one drop, baby. And the black people knew it. But the white people wanted to act like they didn't know. But he was so good at Uncle Tom and advocating for the interests of the super rich whites that they didn't put that out on him. But he was also homosexual. Mm-hmm. And his affair, in a lifelong affair with this man, in which he dressed as the woman. So what is this crazy stuff? And he's the one who is enforcing the main law enforcement agent of the world. Well, we were supposed to admire the fact that J. Edgar Hoover had, he was passing, but the black people knew. Well, the whole thing about their establishment is to organize a hookup for the rich to get richer. And I look at y'all and the ease with which y'all manage careers and money and are able to build institutions and keep higher level ideas circulating, that I'm advocating now that we return to what had been the tradition for survival of the free blacks during slavery. They created financial institutions, burial systems, mutual support societies, burial societies, basically insurance companies. And you learned because of the network that resisted the refusal to have black people learn anything. Mm. They used to say during before the Civil War, during the time of the Underground Railroad, that something would happen in Philadelphia, and before it could get to Richmond, the black people in Richmond would already know. Mm-hmm. You see? And well, wait a minute, how did this happen? The black people did not need to make their resistance visible. It was eternal. It was day and night. The whole thing about how the black community sustained itself, it was from sundown to sunup. You see, and they had to then be ready sunup to go to work for Oyimbo. And I'm able to benefit from the study of that and what that meant, and how we basically, when you look at the thread of events from 1776 to 1860, mm-hmm. and you see that it was inevitable that there was going to be a civil war. That black people did not stop the thrust for freedom. The fact that the white people do not include it as part of their history, but they could do nothing but keep adjusting and trying to incorporate these different various methodologies of resistance and the the undercover work that was going on in the United States. They couldn't Lincoln was forced into glory, as who was it? One of the great, right? Not Lerone Bennett, but forced into glory. That was a biography of Abraham Lincoln. We should know that. I remember in the 70s, early 70s, I was an activist and I was teaching. I taught a course in communications at Trenton State Prison. They had a college program at that time for the men, and it was a college level communications course. And that was my first time teaching, and certainly first time teaching in that type of environment. And uh, I learned. I had to learn. They taught me a process because I would come in there with the concepts and this is what the theory says and blah blah. And they said, well, what does that mean? And it came down, they wanted me to break it down and make it plain.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is that you're talking about, especially when you use multisyllabic words, when you're talking about concepts that could be considered higher level philosophy, average Americans are not going to know what you're talking about. However, I found that these average Americans locked up in prison were not average intellects. Most of them were brilliant. Some of the best and the brightest minds I've ever come across have been locked up in somebody's prison. That is not a mistake. That's why when you get to a place like when I was at Harvard, there are certain times you get invitations to come to this certain one. We want you to meet so and so. And how are you they're gonna find out? They know who they have locked up.
Mm.
What is
Mumia.
in Philadelphia?
Mumia.
Munir.
Mm.
I remember the whole shit. I was living in Philadelphia at the time when he got accused. Oh no, they knew they had to get him.
Yeah.
Because he was too effective and a brilliant writer and communicator. And so they said, oh, well, we have to hook up something. No, he didn't do the thing. He's innocent. But in Philadelphia, it's a consequence of Rizzo that he's locked up.
Yeah.
But we have to realize that among us, those who are now out here and doing the discussion, when we look at terms in Let the Circle Be Unbroken, and we see them, the Swahili terminologies, our people need to understand how do you approach pronunciation of these words? Because among the terroristic tactics that was used, I remember as a boy, if somebody said a word that sounded African, there was, oh, ooga booga, oh. No, you didn't want no white man to hear you say that because they would take your tongue and slice it.
Woo.
If they heard you speaking an African word.
Mm.
The person who refused to submit would, if they said some kind of African word, yeah, they would torture you and draw and quarter you, a horse tied to each limb, and then given command to rip you apart. The head would be posted. You have a mile marker on the road. At that mile marker is a post. And at the top of that post would be the severed head of a nigger. To warn everybody, blood dripping down the post. Now, that was supposed to stop us from seeking information. It was to stop us from possibly developing means of communication among ourselves. It didn't work. When I've been looking, because Oriola know we trying to design the rites of passage curriculum for boys in the 16 to 19-year-old age range. And now from what I've known, I say, well, because you have to look at what is the backstory for the rites. What is the unifying history that you give them? And I found, we can definitely go back to West African culture. We can go back certainly to, Kemet, and Nubia, all that. But what about 7 generations? The 7 generations. We've been here more than 7 generations. And where are the heroes?
Danny, I was about to say the same thing, Bob. I was like, if we're gonna start here, then we have to talk about the over 200 slave revolts that took place with the Africans. Right. We are the victors, so we must tell the story from the victorious standpoint. Right.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. So we have to when we share our history, we have to share it from that view.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that is the African worldview. That's the African worldview. And
the African worldview is peopled by resurrected spirits.
Banny.
It's like, when we're giving the youth and understand, well, you're in life. This is life. What happens? You go through various levels of learning and growth and development, and the symbolism of it is that there are ceremonies, the rites of passage, that boost you. And the goal is to become an elder so that you could qualify to become an ancestor. And that is the ancestor who comes and is born again.
Manny.
See, and that's where we have to look at this, and
that ain't no spookism.
No, and this is what we have to do. We can't let the boys think that this is too difficult for them. It is that the very idea of the African cosmology is the core of what is taught to the children from day one.
Benny. Yep.
You see, and the children, well, of course, I'm going to be born again. And if you need a devil, you can invent a devil, because there is no such force. There is the force in the universe, entropy, and we need to make clear that when Ptah emerged from the mound, you see, okay, that's well, why? Well, what do you think? Because whatever you think could be it, but it's not necessarily it. And the fact is, it happened. And this whole ball got rolling. And obviously, the Creator is not frustrated with us. We're still here. And we are still that grain of sand inside that gets inside the oyster shell, that it keeps irritating it. And the oyster begins to generate a fluid to get that grit out, and that becomes a pearl. We are the pearls. There have never been a day in the history of the colonies of what is now the United States of America and all the states, there has never been one day when we were not here. And so I'm saying that we need to reframe ourselves. We are indigenous of a new being.
I say
we are, as a result of, the word polyglot. You have a number of different factors that come together, and you've got a polyglot, all of this. Well, we are streams from various systems in African culture, from Congo, from East Africa, West
Banny,
Africa,
Banny,
South
Banny,
Africa.
Banny.
All of us got together. I call us stone soup people. There's a European fable
Mhm.
about time when it was very hard that people didn't have nothing to eat, and a guy came through the town and they was telling him ain't nobody got nothing to eat, and he said, oh well, then that's time for some stone soup.
Hmm.
And he goes and gets 3 stones, and he said, well, we need a pot, bring a big pot. And so they got the biggest pot they could find, and he put them the stones in it. And of course, they had the fire going, and he said, and look, put some water. And he said, I wonder if anybody got any carrots. Somebody got some carrots? Oh, I got 1 carrot at the house. And they went back and they cut that up and put that in there. Well, after everybody had put in
A
the
little bit.
little bit they
Hmm.
had,
Hmm.
they had a big pot of soup and everybody had enough. You see, they could get together to survive the next day. And this
And
is
so,
what we have to
so
realize that
that
we are.
right. So I was going to say, Bob, so that thinking, right, is the collective part of African worldview. The
That's right.
collective, right?
Yeah.
The collective forming and creating space for all,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
This is the beauty of this remember Ani, that Black psychology, right? CB,
Mhm.
all of their work, right? Like this African worldview has to set the course and the trajectory for us as a people.
Yes.
We have to
And
use
we,
this as a measuring tool. I'm telling you, we have to use this as a measuring tool, because if we're not, we're going to keep going back into this foolishness that does not serve us.
yeah, and that's where y'all have a duty. I know now I'm gonna be 79 in a few weeks if I make it. I
Man,
give thanks.
I have to
And
play. I have to play.
one of the things that I did not expect 50 years ago was being where I am at now.
Mm.
The activism that y'all are in must be performed. You have not been made conscious for nothing. And I look and I'm saying that some of the people, the hip hop is, who knows which one of the big people is going to be the first to bring in a new round of dialogue in the hip hop rap. That it's got to move to a higher level. Y'all got to find some way to expunge from the Black youth challenge the desire to be a thug. That is not new. It was new because it was what promoting it, openly promoting it in the 80s and 90s, 2000s.
Mhm.
That was something that it could actually be said, because back in the 1890s, when the first generation had come out of enslavement and began to be urbanized, and the boys, teenagers, wouldn't have nothing to do, and they would used to call them cigarette boys, standing on the corner smoking cigarettes.
Right.
You see, and this was problematic because their parents was hustlers.
Right.
Everybody had to be a hustler. And
Mm.
to have boys standing around useless was, oh no,
Well,
you didn't want to be that.
but that came from the African codes, right? Where you could not stand
Mhm.
around, right? Like black people were not
Yes.
allowed to do certain things in terms of their
Mhm.
behavior. They couldn't congregate, couldn't look a white woman in the eye, because well, however a white person felt that day might be an offensive crime that a black person might commit, right?
That's it.
So these are the
Yes.
black codes, right? So we have to be mindful. I think even that, the rooting of the black codes is rooted in Eurocentric worldview, right? Right.
Yes. And we should see that when you go to look at that, how the codes were developed,
Mm.
and you look at how did the black people resist the codes, and you see some patterns
Mm.
that were part of our today. What do we pass on? And I'm thinking somebody need to be hip hop who got the rhyming, can take some of the lessons, let the circle be unbroken, and develop some hip hop lessons from that.
So I wanted to say one other thing. Like I'm looking at what you have, Akindele. This is dope, man. Right? Like to be able to see it visually, right? Because the style of learning that some of us have, like we have to be able to see things in a visual standpoint, right? One other thing that I want, Europeans have a need to dominate. They have a need to dominate a people, right? And the thing about it is, right, like while our concept is the complementarian aspect of all of that, right? Like we don't have to dominate people, but then you have to ask yourself this, and this is part of the remember Ani's work, right? Is about the humanity of what we're dealing with. Are these people actually humans? When you look at their behavior, right? When you look at their behavior, right? Who feeds children to an alligator? Right? You have no recorded history of Africans engaging before the European in this type of behavior.
Right.
Who eats other people?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Right? So like these things, like you got to understand the psyche of these people. Because when people ask, well, how did we get in this current situation? And how did we, man, we're dealing with a sick, whatever this thing is. This is a, I don't even want to call it a human. This is something sick, man. You feel me?
Well,
so like remember Ali calls him a Urugu, like call them Urugu, right? Like we got to understand what is the root of that.
That's actually is where the group is moving towards.
Danny.
We started with Nelly Fuller for the practical codification. Then we moved here to Marimba Ani to come into the re-Africanization. We're gonna go to Francis Cress Wilson with more of a clinical view of white supremacy. And then, go into Urugu. I think by that time we'll be prepared physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and mentally to dive into that concept. And it was something I've been talking about with people is past white. I'm like, white people are new on the planet. They're not that. Therefore, what we see them doing is older than them. I believe that. I'm like, it's a system of domination and control. It's just in this particular iteration of the system of domination and control is utilized. White supremacy is what's being utilized. But we can see systems of domination and control having existed in other places in the world. At the level of them in this iteration, no, we ain't seen nothing like them, right? In this iteration. But if we look at Genghis Khan, right, who is also Asian, who's coming, look at what he did. I don't know what happened on this side of the planet with the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Incans and all of that. What was actually happening going on. But I think it's what I'm getting at is that I think that this is my hypothesis that there's a spirit of energy that's there that we're seeing manifested within them, right? And that spirit, and if even if some kind of globalization thing would happen and they would be eliminated, right, just through intermarrying and interbreeding, right, that still that spiritual energy of whatever that is would be around, and we would have to, and it would still need to be dealt with. You know what I'm saying? In some shape or form. So that's something I've been thinking about, and of course you already know this, or we become like them.
Right?
If I can't see what's actually there, which ain't in the physical, it's not just in the physical, right? There I was about to use some of their reasoning, in the spiritual from the physical. You see, I was about to do that, right? So it's being shown in the physical, and right here I want to point out some. This is where I thought this was really powerful, which she points out their worldview. And part that really stuck with me was this opposing pair concept, right? That there's, and it's always for, as y'all said, domination. She used the words power, control, and destruction. Always power, control, and destruction. I think the only real, I remember Sister Myra, she said this. She said the really only true spiritual sin is the abuse of power, and in the realm that shows up in various different many ways. But I thought that was very profound. That there's one sin in the spirit realm, and that's the abuse of power, which we see because of their technological disposition and mining disposition, that they've been able to take the physical power of the planet, and with the mindset that they've had. So a part of that is in creating, is in separating what's valued and what's lacking value.
Yeah.
These immigrants, they lack value as a human being. These Palestinians, they lack value. That's the mindset. And people will say, oh, well, we kind of know that that's not correct. But I think people need to, like I think Trump and his folks have given a very needed wake-up call to coastal America. Because the South and mid-America already knew this.
So I think one of the things, Bob,
the West Coast and the East Coast kind of needed to see it. To me, we're going through a ritual of light, and I'll let you speak there. But is to see the separations of what's going on, and it's so in our face right now. But the ones I think that's not in our face are the ones I really want to dive into. The reason and emotion separation. Right? The things that I'm seeing Black people just take on, the idea of good and bad. That idea, that concept, the demon and the angel, the God and the devil, that is not our concept.
No, it ain't.
And even people who don't believe in that conceptual kind of religious thing, it's so much in the ethos of American and Western society. This is a good thing. This is a bad thing. This is that, and it's constantly. I had to check myself since I've been reading this all this week and all the last few weeks. I've been checking myself on how am I judging. Our beloved sister Dr. Charlene Johnson passed away a couple weeks ago, but that was one of the lessons that she taught me. My therapist. She said, stop judging. You're judging yourself, you're judging others. And she said this to us, she said to many of us, that man does not have was not given the gift of judgment. Man was not given the gift of judgment. Why? It says because our perception is much too limited. She said our perception is much too limited to be judging everybody and everything. And so we see that within the European construct is that they judge things either good or bad. So, and then that way they can't figure out a lot of stuff. Why can't we figure out how to solve the common cold or cancer or all these other things? Because they've judged the virus or the cancer or what they call something that's a malady. They've judged it bad. Instead of looking at the whole thing as some form of organism that is working together to a particular purpose, that everything in the universe is trying to achieve ma'at. Instead of a worldview that says that the earth and the human beings are crooked and evil and wicked and are broken and separate from that which is divine. That's that was a key schism in my mind that I had to do like years and years and years of work in ritual and ceremony and in plant medicine and in meditation to purge myself of that poison. And here's the thing, poison, a little bit of poison is medicine. So even in me saying the word poison, right? Like even in what they're doing to us, there's some medicinal property that can be extracted from it.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we stop the judgment. We can actually get the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
The separation of reason and emotion, knowledge and opinion, objective and subjective reasoning, science and religion, or science and spirituality, we should say, mind and body, masculine and feminine, which I heard Baba Sincere speak on, just these opposing pairs versus the complementary pairs of the African worldview, which the determining mode is harmony.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about the singers like, that used to harmonize back in the day, and even the rap group, Bone Thugs.
Yeah. Yeah. And that notion of harmony is something that we hear that term and we think of it as, okay, this means music. Well, harmony is unseen. Music is unseen.
I said.
Kamene, I believe, is the name of the brother. He says science is seen spirituality, and spirituality is unseen science. And when you look over these complementary pairs, in that, with that perspective, that the intent of complementary is so that you use everything for its functional purpose. That, like I take a tincture of lobelia. It's a pretty powerful herb that they can make into a tincture. I have a lung condition. Mm. And my daughter, who's somewhat of a herbalist, and I've known lobelia, but lobelia is a poison. And so you take 6 small drops every day. But I don't want to take the whole squeezer, the dropper bottle. No, it could probably knock me out. Well, I look now at how do we practice let the circle be unbroken? And at my age, I'm ready to say, okay, I have to wait and see what y'all want done. Because life, I like to project, you live life in 25-year chunks. And I think now it is possible for us to get a grip, because to dare to contend that you want to have a long life with something, nigga, you can't live no longer. Nigga ain't supposed to die a natural death. And so I had to get that out of my mind. And I'm saying, well, I want to see where are y'all going? What do y'all need? And be ready to tell you, don't put that one on top of that one because this one at the bottom is weak. So I'm not going to do it. Y'all got to do it under the caution, the advice of those with experience in life. And I'm glad, because I see y'all, because this is cutting edge. It may not be realized right now, but it's cutting edge. That let the circle be unbroken is a lesson in the rites of passage of one stage or another. I think it should be something that is part of, break it down and make it plain so you could teach it at the nursery school.
I said.
Make it something that every child is going to know by the 6th grade. You're going to remember, let the circle be unbroken, said you got to have this as your appropriate way of carrying yourself.
That's it.
One of the things that I know is that we do not have to have another generation of people who think of themselves as bitches and thugs.
That's right.
That has to come out. It must come out, because that's not what Black Power was all about.
I have even one even better. Like we no longer have to use their approaches and the academic in the academic world, right? We know that we have African-centered principles and theories that we can use in helping address the issues of our children and our people that look like us, right? We can ground ourselves in those principles. And I put some quotes in the chat, right, that I got from the N2 conference, right? I just wanted to talk a little bit about the N2 conference, because when you talk about N2, right, there's concepts of harmony, balance, interdependentness, right? These are the concepts that we want to work with when it comes to healing techniques of working with African people, right? Authenticity, right? Like, these are some of the things. And so Dr. Phillips is the one who founded this concept, right, which is rooted in Bantu, right, which goes right back to what we're talking about,
Right.
the root of, right, what is Bantu? Bantu is the life force, right? That's what guides us. That's what's right. So we have different titles, but it's all rooted in the same philosophical worldview. Right? So we don't need to get caught up in the divisiveness. We need to get caught up in the complementarian viewpoints of different cultures and different practices, right? And how can we add those to us, right, as a people, right? I did want to say one thing, right? So in talking about Kobe Campbell, I'll be remiss, right? Because I love him to death, right? So when I met him in Richmond, right, this is the brother who talked about cultural misorientation, right? But I said, he said, well, guess who I was taught by? And I said, well, who, Bob? Who taught you? He said, Bobby Wright.
Right.
Said,
That's
wait a minute, what? Right? So he's enlightening me, right? So who is Bobby Wright? Bobby Wright is the ancestor who wrote Psychopathic Racial Personalities, right? Which lets us know who we are dealing with. We are dealing with psychopaths, right? And Bobby Wright, in his little book of essays, really breaks down what do we need to do when we work with psychopaths. Right? He says the surgery, jail, or prison, or death. Those are only 3 options he's given us. And he said the surgery will be too expensive. Right? So what are we up against? Right? What are we dealing with? Right? So let me just, and I'll stop right here after this. So you say, well, who is Bobby Wright? Bobby Wright had a clinic in Chicago, right, where he worked with the mental health of African people. He also had an after-school program. One of his students in the after-school program was an ancestor, Fred Hampton. Right?
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Right? So of course he's hurt when he sees his student being assassinated. Right? Of course he's highlighting, understanding what a psychopath is, because he watched it take place in the world after he's touched the lives of Black children.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is what we up against, man.
And I think that what you're saying, like that, the psychopathy is the schism, right? Like the psychological schism that has happened to the white folks that's been in power, like upholding the system of white supremacy, because there has to be a cause and effect relationship. And so we think of, with the traumas that we've experienced and faced, well, what about what they've experienced? You can't dehumanize someone without dehumanizing yourself. It's impossible. It's impossible.
That's if they're human.
Yeah.
Well, that is not a spurious issue, because look at Michael Bradley's Iceman Inheritance. And there's reason for us to say that it is the white man, I would say, as human as the African. The Igbo have a concept of, you don't necessarily say human being, you say human becoming. because the
Benny.
whole thing starts from a seed and an egg, and it doesn't stop until you transition. And then there's still the material that's got to go back into the earth, and the spirit is going to recycle. And so we have to look at these people and the fact that they invented racism in the 1600s because, and we should realize also, like Robert was saying about Genghis Khan. And the effect that Genghis Khan and his impact on what became Europe, and the brutality of these people who had not experienced the Eden of being in Africa, where nature was not a threat. You learned how to work with nature, and you didn't need to have brick houses.
Right.
See? And we look back, and that whole question is something that we've got to be conscious of. If they said, okay, they say that they have a culture that's 6,000 years old. Well, the Africans is talking 200,000 years old. Yeah. And, so if they came into being at 10,000 years ago, and actually it's becoming, so you become a human being. You're not finished. And I know now I use that framework because I need reason for optimism. And as I am experiencing by having worked with youth, when I was 68, 9 years, working with youth who was doing the murder rate.
Right.
You see, and I had to come to understand, I had to talk to them. Well, they need to know that they should look forward to a discussion like this. That this is the type of thing that would make them clear to them that there is no reason for you to perform the thug. The thug is a waste of masculine energy. And the child is informed to avoid the poisons, avoid going over there because it's too risky. You can slip and then you'll fall and your life is over. You see, you're supposed to live till your 90s. But we've got a culture that allows a boy to think that he can prove himself a man at 15 and does something that's risky that he cannot handle, but he thinks that's a manly thing to do, and he's out. Now, Oyimbo knows that all adolescent boys have to go through a period of testing. And should they test themselves so that they're finished?
Benny.
So that you don't have to worry about him turning 50? You're not a full adult until you're 50. And usually when people get 50, they can agree. You see, but tell that to somebody who's 20. Oh, I'm 21 years old. Yeah, okay. All right. But go sit down.
But that's why we need, that's why we need spaces, Bob, for us to test that, right? To put
I'm saying that the ideas in Let the Circle Be Unbroken. Those of you who are working with 5-year-olds, what can you take from the book to put into that, to the lesson? And so we're talking about complementary pairs. Well, hot and cold, when they work together, is warm. The child, we should bring to our children the concepts that we're getting, because when you look at like Fukuyama and his work on the Congo, the Congo now, though you got some deep stuff, and they start with the children, showing them the higher level principles. And the children then come to know that no matter what happens, you are supposed to maintain self-control. no matter what is happening. And so when we look at the impact of being captured and thrown over into the hold of a white man's ship, that the people were not so fragile that they would panic and immediately become destroyed.
Mm.
There were certain African peoples who the crew on the coast of what is now Ghana,
Mm.
the white man could not rule them. And in fact, they would avoid going near them at all. They were an aquatic people. And we need to teach the boys. You see, every people had a thrust of resistance. That's part of what they took onto the slave ship and became part of what they brought to the African community and we survived.
So I was going to say this, Bob. One other thing I think is important is not only are we teaching, right? Not only are we teaching the boys, right, but we're modeling to the boys this manhood process.
Yes,
right?
yes.
We are modeling to them. We are the example. We are the example for the boys, right? And the interconnectedness and interdependence of all of this is that other men are learning through us too.
Yes.
Right.
And that, you see, that's why I'm saying mine eyes have seen the glory. I'm telling you, because you all are doing it.
Yeah. So we're not competing with one another, right? When Akindele comes into space, there's no competition because that's my brother. Right? There's no competition there. There's no ego. There's nothing there because that's my brother. Now, if I am doing something out of line, right, and not in unison with harmony and balance, right, then I need to be challenged and corrected by community.
That's it.
Yeah. Right?
Because of
that happened. Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead.
Because of the interdependence.
Banning.
Right.
Right. And that happens, and that gets modeled to the boys.
Right.
Right. And where this is where we take that now, because it's very important that we realize in our analysis of the situation we're in, look at these people who have shown themselves to be our avowed enemy. And one of the characteristics of their culture, besides just the just desire for power and control, they define that power and control to imbalance nature. They attack their women. Their women were used during when they couldn't find nothing and the glacier was too bad. They'd kill her and eat her. You see, and the key difference between African culture and European culture is the African culture is matrifocal now. You don't make no manhood and your woman is starving. Or you got your woman and ain't got no house, no roof over her head. You see, and you call her yours. You see, wait now. The African man becomes a man by exercising the masculine so that the feminine is supported.
And when the men come back from the bush with the boys, who is there to evaluate them if they have achieved their manhood?
That's right.
The women, right? The women determine.
And the women tell the men.
That's right.
The men have to tell the women what the boys are going to be able. This is it. And the women say, well, you should mention that because the boys lately have been going and doing this and so. And the women, and so when Oyimbo, we have to go back to the period between 1850 and World War I, and look at. That's when the white man really went into Africa. You see, because having these forts and everything was one thing, but go in there so that he actually saw the Benin City. And so he saw Benin City and was amazed. Indoor plumbing, stuff they didn't have in Paris, you see. And the British had to blow it up. And they didn't blow it up until the 1890s. So the structure of the people it's very recent that it began to infect the the mind of the colonized African. And y'all should see that our thrust now, every boy who is in a incarcerated setting has to be seen as a real victim of war. Mm. And I have known men who were delinquents and grew up, matured, and became reliable leaders of the community.
Benny.
You know, and so we have to look at them now, and we cannot allow Oyimbo. He doesn't know what to do. One thing I had to be surprised. I was surprised about we talk about African systems of knowing, and the reality is African systems of living. And one thing, you do not find any artifacts that indicate that they had buildings where they were going to lock people up, prisons. In Kemet, Nubia,
there's no prisons.
Congo. No, there's no. And that does not mean that they had a crime society. It means that if you did something that was of such unusual nature that you brought about an imbalance in the community, where there was a rippling effect of your negative action. Oh no, the next time we need to do a human sacrifice is you. You see? Because no, they're not keeping you around. I know, and I have read accounts of in Yoruba communities that there would be a big hole dug with the walls of the hole slanted up. And so it was like a beaker. At the bottom, they would throw you in there, and if your family wasn't too disgraced, they might come and throw some food down there. Otherwise, you was going to have to eat whatever fell in the hole. You see, and when they had the need to get somebody to give to Ogun, he wanted some blood, they'd come and drag you out the hole, and you would be the one. African people do not tolerate dehumanizing activity. The boys would know, like if something, there came some kind of problem in the community, and the king or the chief called all the men together, all the boys had to go too, because the main problems in community would be either, if it wasn't some kind of deliberate bullshit males can do, it could be somebody who was trying to work some witchcraft. Well, at such an event, all of the males, from the eldest to the youngest of a family line, was going to be there. Because when the word came down as to what the consensus was, what was going to be, how we were going to regard this, everybody had to know. And because you was there, you that's Itar, that's real experience. You was right there. And nobody had to tell you. And they didn't put up with it. And I know, I was 12 years old. My mother and my aunt told me, men in our family don't go to jail. And kept quiet and looked at me. And they had prepared a wonderful lunch. And I'm sitting there eating, and I realized, this means more than I think. And I kept that in mind. I ain't been to jail. Well, white people have locked me up, but they had to let me go because they didn't have no reason. It was jealousy, you see. And we have to see that Black people, even today, the murder rate is kind of high. There didn't used to be no murder rate. And that's part of a thing to stigmatize us. But we have to say to our sons, do not participate in that stigmatic behavior. You cannot do it because it is a distraction from your purpose of life that's here, let the circle be unbroken with whole people. You can't be a nigger. A nigger is a mistake because now the nigger is completely unnecessary. Used to need to be niggers, but now a nigger is an impediment for the growth. And our people, we cannot let nobody go through life believing that they're a nigger.
That's true, Bob. And something that you're saying about with the young men and the young women, especially the young men, I think connects to this point that Marimbani makes about force vital. He talks about as the life force, right? And she quotes as Leonard Barrett saying the supreme African value is the life vital, the force vital, or the life force to live life robustly, to live life to the fullest, to live life with as much energy as one most forcibly can. And as I thought, and this is something I've thought about for years, is what is it tends to be, no, it's not even just urban or lower class black folk, right? If there is such a middle thing as a middle class, right? It's not just the lower class was in the hood. Also, we'll see this with some of the lower middle and middle class black folks as well, especially black boys, is them trying to take on the thug identity. Like the HBCUs and the colleges, like I went to Tuskegee, you'll see it. You'll see suburban black boys who ain't never had a thug experience, no hood experiences, trying to take on this identity, right? And really destroy their whole life in the process. And the parents don't know what to do. They said, we put them in private schools. We have them in the best communities. And this thing that came and got them, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think about that as an energy in the hood and outside the hood that's moving. And I was like, well, what good things about that energy are there that the young men aren't getting in what society is telling them is the other way, in other direction, right? And as I think about it, what it is what does society tell you you're supposed to do? You're supposed to go to school, which you don't like. You ain't learning nothing that's helping you. Then you go to where? You go to college and you do it again and you get integrated more into the white supremacy system. And then you go to some kind of corporate job, or you end up being some like a middle person for the system, a gatekeeper. That's what my job is, a gatekeeper for the system.
Yep.
You're going to just be put into these same systems to support the same thing versus somebody who is countercultural, right? Not to say that the counterculture which they've been like programmed to do is one that is anti-life, which is problematic. But I think there is something to be said about someone thinking that they're doing something against the system or the way that things are being done by the white power structure. And I think that she hits it right here. What is the soul trying to get at? Why does that person in the corporate America with the what is it called? The cubicle. Why are they dying on the inside? Why is black men having issues in the boardroom? They're saying now black men having issues in the boardroom with what is it called? Erectile dysfunction because they're so demasculinized in that environment in the white corporate America. Like, is this? It's force vital. It's life force. The African Sealy is this to live life with as much energy and as forcefully as we can. Like I'm having to hold back constantly at my job. I'm having to hold back.
So Akindele, that's so I put a quote from Into, right? It says, cancer comes in the body when you keep quiet.
There it is.
You see what I'm saying?
So
that's so go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
We live it with as much energy and as forcefully as we can. We're going to sing the blues. We're going to like the vibration of what we is. I ain't talking about the actual music. I'm talking about the idea of sex and violence and peace and joy and pain and grief all in one thing, right? Life. You feel me? Like we're gonna have to go ahead and let that expression out. And I don't think I know, because I got it right from my generation. I'm 42. Was the hip hop culture gave a channel to be able to express a part of the profane divinity, the part of the divine that's profane. You got to express that. You ain't express that in church, and you couldn't express it at school. And if you grew up in the household I did with my grandma and my mama, you better not express it in the house either, right?
That's right.
So where were we able to get it out? You know what I'm saying? That was the juke joint versus the church. It's like, I love what Ryan Coogler has done with the movie Sinners. Because really what he does is he's putting together the church and the juke joint. At the end of the movie, if people stayed, you had to wait way to the end. Sammy, the main character, the blues musician, is in the church. And he's playing this little, I think it's This Little Light of Mine. Then he changes it into a blues song. Then he merges them because he was the merger. Literally. That's the hoodoo, right?
Yeah.
We the hoodoo because we the voodoo. We're nature's response to the stimulus of life. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, I just see that we at the even in the black intellectual, right? The black HBCU, the black religious establishment, the black political establishment must embrace the hood, and the hood must embrace that because or we're incomplete. They call ratchet in the hood is honest. Call it ratchet. It be honest. You know what I'm saying? They need to be honest. Stop being so stuffy and constipated. You know.
Well, you know, this is where we are rewarded by the study of history, our history, because we will see that the people who were enslaved did not trust the white man.
That's right.
There was no regarding him as being worth emulating. The entire, I capsulized our journey as the pose of dependency, allowing the, you can posture being inferior without being inferior. And that's what the Africans did. When you see what they did in the 1600s, while they were developing and designing how racism was going to function, and the Africans would constantly duck and parry, move off. You know how when you're fending in a fight,
when you're in the martial arts, yep.
And what we got to realize is that this was strategic. That there were ways that Frederick Douglass's biography is very important. He learned from an elder when he was under Cuffy, this slave breaker. And he went with the elder out into the bush, and the elder dug up this root, washed it off, and told him, "Put this in your pocket."
I see.
And he put that John the Conqueror is a focus of courage. You see, he had been brought up, Frederick, of course, brought up, you cannot hit a white man. You see, that's something you had to learn as a boy and be shown that you could not hit a white man back.
So right there, Bob, I think is where we start to see the internalization of our self-hate, right? If we cannot attack or hurt the enemy, then we begin to internalize that, right? If that energy is not able to be released properly, then it gets released in the wrong direction, which is it gets released against people that look like us.
Well, and there is, you see, this is why we have to take that lesson of what happened to when Frederick Douglass defended himself against Cuffy as king. He might have been 18 or 19 years old, and he got the man wore out without striking him. He would not allow himself to be struck, and so they struggled, and Cuffy called to another people who was assigned to him, a slave, and he said, "Come help me get it off of him." And the slave told him, "Master didn't send me here to help you get somebody off of you." You see? So what we this is why an analysis of these incidents. Well, there's the story of Billy Blair, which is it's in Freedom. I think it was 1866. That he was a boy about 18, 19 years old, and that was a hog killing time, and that was the time when a lot of people would gather together, and and there was some kind of these white boys uh, criticized him and attacked him, and he fought back and fought them to the point where they had to leave. Well, 2 or 3 days later, they come back at night to his house and dragged him out the house. And they took him and tortured him and cut him into pieces. They cut him into pieces like you would cut a ham, bundled it up, and took it back and presented it to his mother. You see, this is the kind of thing that needs to be understood about who we're dealing with.
This is why I say then what other human does this?
That's right. And so when we say this, we have to let the boys know, when you lose control of yourself and allow the white man to put you in handcuffs, he got you.
Well, so I think one of the things that I just want to add on to was that, in addition to the Black psychology, the shifting the mindset of our children, right, is that I have to think of Amos Wilson, right? And Amos Wilson says that one of the reasons why we are not attacking or directing this energy, right, that we talk about, that we know exists within inside of Black men, in the right direction, because we haven't been taught to do that.
Yeah.
We haven't been taught to direct that energy at the enemy.
No. Right? So the exact opposite.
Let me. So we are the mothers and fathers of self-defense. We are the mothers and fathers of all of these fighting styles.
Wow.
We created that. I witnessed it. I've seen it on the walls. I've seen it on the walls in the Medunetza in Kemet. Right? We did that. We created that. I looked at us wrestling and, all the hand-to-hand. I've seen it. I've got pictures of it. So if we are the mothers and fathers of that, then you can't tell me that we can't create, we can't conquer this European.
Yes.
Right? We have to have a component of rites of passage where our boys are involved in self-defense. This is where the friendly competition that Bob Adamola, the Agba, is talking about, where our boys can come together and sharpen their swords against one another. Right? And go out into the world and be prepared as men to make sure that their families, their community, and themselves stay safe.
Yeah, right. And it can be done. It can be done.
It's been done.
Yeah, and this is, to me, y'all are evidence that things that we began in the 60s and 70s worked. And we invented Kwanzaa and moved. Kwanzaa became a way to get into African centricity. And that, opens us up to the universe. I give thanks. I give thanks and praise.
Yep. I got to run, Bobbers. I appreciate the conversation. I have to go. Yeah. I will be in communication. I appreciate you, Akindele, for the invite, man. I continue trying to jump on. Bob Adamola, we'll talk soon.
Yes, I do play. I'm going to go too.
Odabo.
All right. Odabo.
All right, I'm going to work through the rest of the chapter here. We have it recorded for the group that's not able to make the meeting. All right, so we're here with the contrast of African ontology with being with others and the interconnection, and the Western ontology of separateness and domination, which we've been talking about. I want to move on to the yeah. So then we have a African philosophy and worldview. The introduction of the principle of Ma'at as being truth, balance, justice, and cosmic order as the ethical foundation of African spirituality, which I find is really powerful, because Ma'at also has this idea of harmony. So instead of good, bad, right? That's the separation thing, right? Like men, women, masculine, feminine, and then they're at war with each other, old, young, at war with each other, it's constant fighting. How do we find a way of harmonizing everybody the same way that we would harmonize within a musical band or in a choir? You know, it's just literally a different way of viewing the world.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually, it's interesting too. This is seen in popular American media, but the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars. That's literally like the idea of Star Trek is the idea of the Federation, is the idea of Ma'at, something where you have all different types of people, all different types of aliens, all type of beings, all living in a harmonious thing under a particular code, versus Star Trek, where it's just pirating on a cosmic level, right? Like in the space level, like those. It's interesting how we'll see this, but we tend to see in American media is all conflict, just constant conflict. We see dystopian future, and we don't see much utopian or a Ma'atian. And I think that is like in our creation of media, our creation of art, that it's important to depict what it should be, like the Ma'atian ideas, so that, because when we take that in, we project that reality. And so I think that's one of the tricks right now of the system through Hollywood and social media and whatever else, is to just constantly cause conflicts between the lower classes, so that there can be no actual like paying attention to what the bankers in Wall Street and the politicians and the people at the top, what's actually happening. Keep everybody confused. So I wanted to pull this in, like the actual image of Ma'at, right? See the feather on her head that is utilized as the tool to be weighed against the heart. You'll see Osset will also take the same pose, but she will not have the feather on her head. And I also think this is interesting because here we see principle Ma'at, truth, balance, justice, cosmic order. So the order for the African could be seen as the feminine. And then we look in Kemet, we have Epes and Set. Both of them are, I'll say, Set, you have a masculine figure that is being looked at as chaos. But the thing within Kemetic understanding is that every energy had a masculine and feminine pair. So there was no, there's a masculine aspect of chaos and a feminine aspect of chaos. And there's a masculine aspect of order and a feminine aspect of order, right? So there wasn't this, that again, when we start to see how they've separated things, we can start to bring them back together and get our sense back. So this is the feminine process, the feminine attribute of order and balance. And then this is one of my Baba's, Master Yasir Rahotep, who created a system of Kemetic yoga for the reasoning of liberation. Him and Master Hopi, they looked at the channels of energy within the body and at the Medu Neter, the hieroglyphics. They looked at them and created a system of yoga to channel energy in particular ways. So that's what I'm certified in. So I've spent much time with Master Yasir. Rahotep, and I know he a brother from Chicago, straight up brother, but he channeled this practice, and now he's taking it all over the world. I'm talking to Kemetic yoga practitioners in Brazil who also are liberation minded, right? Because he's trained them, and a big part of our training is studying liberation material and stuff. So this is like a kind of it's kind of a cool thing that he's been able to accomplish here. So also what Marimba Ani does is she goes into the idea of Ubuntu. And I want to say something about Ubuntu, and that is that y'all was actually hitting on it earlier. Are these people human? So one of my friends who's a Kosa, she's a Kosa theologian, she explained to me, she said to us in a group that we were in, she said, Ubuntu is much deeper than I am because we are. So Ubuntu, she said and she started speaking Kosa to her, because Kosa people on the call too, and then she starts going back to English. She says Ubuntu, it means that if you are not acting humanely, you are not a human. It's like that our humanity exists within us humanely acting. That is what connected us. Is our humanity, but we must act humanely to have that humanity. And I said, wow. I said, so these people under that guy that we were talking about, white supremacists. I said, so these people are not even human under the idea of what is it that a human is. And this stands in direct opposition to the Christian idea of total depravity, meaning that Adam, by eating the forbidden fruit, then humanity then falls into total depravity and a complete separation from God and from each other, right? You can't have Ubuntu, that concept, and that other concept. They're very difficult for those two to exist unless the Christian or the Hebrew or the Jewish practitioner, unless they go before the fall and say, oh, we are all made in the image of God, which I would think probably came from the Hebrew people, their introduction into the Kemetic spirituality and into the Persian spirituality, the Babylonian spirituality, that they started to form that kind of idea, a reflection of an image, right? So I think we do have a place even to talk to our Christian brothers and sisters, our Muslim brothers and sisters, our Hebrew brothers and sisters about this, and I think it's needed and necessary for our movement to be able to say, let's go pre-fall. Let's go pre-fall. What are we? We all made an image of God. Okay, now let's talk about this Ubuntu thing. So what is actually a human? Right? You see what I'm saying? There's a way of reasoning that we can utilize to pull those brothers and sisters in. You know what I'm saying? Who is the majority of us? Muslims and Christians here in the diaspora. So I think it's strategic.
That one of the things about that goal is that it's difficult to imagine how that could happen without a fundamental agreement about the African worldview and its value. Because the person who is fated for sin, if that is your destiny, and if it means that you as a result, you will die and nothing, you move into nothingness or into this hell that's eternal. Well, this, first of all, I think we have to go back and be able to show them that this is something that was made up 2,000 years ago, right? 3,000 years ago. You see that this did not exist, and so I think to a certain point, it's a question of if you can say harmony, okay, well I'm speaking, I'm gonna add my if somebody wants to yeah, and well, okay, well you want to think that's gonna harmonize, but you got to intend to be in harmony. You've
Yeah,
got to play your role in the harmony. And I think one of the things I look at with Black Christianity is that the people of the Congo were Christian long before slavery. Now, there were other peoples in like the Igbo. In the Igbo, they have communities that are Hebrew. It's they're not that you don't have to buy in to the born in sin in order to be a Christian. And the Africans knew that these white people who were doing all this horrible stuff to them, they knew that that's not the same as their Christian. Christ Jesus could come be the consoler in the enslaved community, and he wasn't white. You see that's not. We have to look back at how we got over, and it will show that the differences in such things as whether I could call myself a Hebrew Israelite or a Christian or a Muslim or even now an Orisha, no matter what you practice, you got to have good character.
right.
You got to demonstrate your compatibility with the intentions of Ma'at.
I see.
That's it. And I now know that there are Christians who have been able to incorporate within their Christianity certain fundamentals that allow them to have an African worldview. And they're comfortable with that. I'm not going to tell them they have to become Orisha practitioners. No. It's just, and all over the continent is a result of the diaspora from Kemet and Kush after the invaders took over. You know, when they started the deterioration, and Khamenei says in this wonderful book on African, I mean, spirituality before religion, that the Cometians, one of the reasons why they made those temples, why they made the pyramid, because they saw that there would be a day when they would fall. Everything rises, everything falls.
I see.
And they put their notes and commentaries about life in stone so that they would last.
I see.
And now we have to look at the people like I have not been able to ever get myself organized to attend the exhibition of the treasures from King Tut's tomb.
Oh, yeah. I've been able
See,
to.
and I'd like to do it, but we have to realize that their culture not only dehumanizes the living, but dehumanizes the dead. They have disturbed the tombs of the dead.
Right.
What kind of good fortune can we expect from these people? And they show the loot in their various museums all over the earth.
I see. The bodies and everything.
Yes. And okay, so in fact, when I remember when the thing came through Baltimore some years ago, and some of us were saying, I don't know if I want to go look at that. Because when you think about it, all of this stuff was stolen.
Right.
You see? And so, but if I question that, oh, then I'm barbaric. You know, how could you be expected to understand? Well, no. After now, I'm so much, and I have to stop myself because I still regret having gone to a white college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I still regret it, and I've got to be able to describe my experience and how I came to that realization, because it really hit me in my senior year at the college.
You went to Harvard, didn't you, Bobby?
Well, I went to Harvard grad school, but undergrad I was the University of Dayton,
Oh,
which
okay.
in Ohio. It happened to be a Catholic school. I didn't know what that meant, but I certainly had an opportunity to come and live. I lived with white people, lived with white boys, and off campus housing, and
Yep.
in white community. I was there were 60 black students, and I think at that time it was 6,500 students at the college.
Wow.
And I didn't have any classes with any black children, black students.
Wow.
And I went through, because in 1967, blackness erupted, baby. And I saw what happened in Newark, the riot in Detroit. And I got back to Dayton, and I did not want to be with these white people.
Right.
I wish I had gone to Morehouse, but my parents had told me neither one of them had been to college. But they said they go to any college, but it can't be under the Mason-Dixon line. And I had to look at the map, and I saw. And I was a good student and everything. And my neighbors, a black couple, and they were missionaries or something, international experience, and they had connections, and they could have got me a full ride to Morehouse.
Oh, wow.
But that was in Atlanta, and I told my mother, "Oh no, that's in Atlanta. That's below the Mason-Dixon line." No, because they hated the South. They hated it.
Were they from
And
the South?
pardon?
Were they from the South?
Yes, both of them. Born in South Carolina. My father, a lot of his raising was in North Carolina, but as soon as they could, they got out. And they didn't like to go down there for nothing but weddings and funerals. And they couldn't, and they knew I was an outspoken kid, I had been involved with stuff since I was 8 years old. I started picketing and active student in ACP, and I would speak up, in forums and in white people. I would debate with white people, and they did not want me in the South. But I know that for me and what I was interested in, it would have been much better to go to a black college because those teachers would have cared about me.
Wow.
And the white teachers at Dayton did not. And I knew it. And I didn't want to sacrifice my destiny to their attitudes, but I would have been much better off my whole life. But, Orisha, our creator had something else for me. As a result of not doing that, there's other things that I didn't get involved in. But I'm just so glad. That's why I look today and I see that this kind of activity right here, it may seem like a few people, but I have seen it spread from a few to many. And the basic thing that I think the most important thing, I'm working with male and black male, African male development, and that the boys have to understand the difference in conceptualizations of manhood, and whether is it men are supposed to be in control of everything, or are men to work with nature and men to work with women, so that you have a balanced culture. You have, because the women are not going to do, most women, even only so recently could I suspect that not all women would be inclined to keep the children safe and healthy. That the men need to know that that's what the male should do too. But the male exists because the female needs help. Because the female ain't never a male been born, except in that first Adam and Eve incident. But ain't never one. As soon as he come out and open his eyes, this woman looking down at him.
Right.
You see, and they never won, not even Donald Trump can say that he did it all himself.
No, that.
And you see, and the thing is, men need to know that it is all human beings begin as female.
I said.
And 6 weeks in, if the father left a Y chromosome instead of X chromosome, then it's going to be a male. So all males originate as females. And the male is because you are being given access to strengths and capacities that assist in you playing a role in working with nature. So that the woman, women, anything men can do, enough women can get together and get done. But the male is here as the helper for the source of life. The earth is alive. And the earth is hey, the sky is male, the earth is female. And that nebulousness of the sky, men must discover a purpose, or else they're useless. And that's the worst thing possible. I have run into men who have accepted being useless.
Wow.
And it's horrible. It's horrible to see. And we black men, that's why one of the things that became obvious to me during the late 60s, early 70s, when this thrust of community dialogue about something outside of the scope of white supremacy, and where we began to combat and organize ourselves in discussion, and Messenger Muhammad was still alive. And so the thing is that there was a period after 67 when, with most brothers, you would see them, they would have a book. There would be somebody he was reading, who was studying, and that would be the topic of conversation. And I think the biggest mistake that we made was accepting a role in the white people's gender wars. The black man, most black boys was raised when I was coming up. If you heard your friend yelling at or cursing at his mother, he shouldn't be your friend, because there's an inherent danger in abusing your mother. That is part of that African being. You're not considered a human being if you're going to do something that abuses your mother.
Right.
You see, but I know I have seen white people. I have been in the house with white boys who disrespect their mother. You see.
Yes.
Because they have a real fear of the power of the woman.
Right.
And these white boys, they can't accept that there's mystery about her. They interpret that as wickedness, while they conduct the wickedness openly.
I think it speaks to, if I go back here, when we look at the masculine versus the feminine, but also the emotion and the reason, putting that as opposing pair versus a complementary thing. So if it's opposing, then you look at the reason and emotion. You look at a woman and you say, okay, she's connected into the emotional. Now there's that valued versus lack of value. So the reason is being valued, the emotion is being devalued, and then therefore she is devalued. And that's, like, I think one of the biggest things that's wrong with Americans, with Western society. They're attempting to make the correction, but because they're still working within this worldview, then the woman just takes the place of the oppressor over the masculine, and you could put emotion over reason, and it's again, it's not coming into ma'at.
Right. It's not balanced.
Not balanced, and that's,
Mm-mm.
and I think that's what right now we're looking. What we see society trying to figure out that balance, and I'm gonna get off here in a second, but I wanted to end with these. And so here's what Marimba Ani is offering us to do, to come into that balance, and that's the sacrifice, offering, and ritual.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
show something here off of that, and also I'll say sacred time, ritual drama, drum, ancestral veneration. What I'm about to show, it goes into all of that.
Mm.
And so what I'm going to show is I'm going to show 3 videos. And these I think are, because especially with a lot of our young people, like they need to see something, right? Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna start with this. This is she's going into a trance. They're saying goddess, don't worry about that. That's Orisha, Oya. She's going into a trance. Oya is entering in her one of the right. So what we notice, the clinking of metal, the rhythm of the drum,
Mm-hmm.
the harmony of the singing, right? There's all that going on, like that's all happening, and they're controlling a space, or I should say, controlling. They're holding a space for the spirit to come in and be able to be settled and energy. And Marimba Ani says that this is the height of really the human, like this experience, this human experience, because what you're doing here is the height of the spiritual experience of the human is being possessed, is taking on
Yeah.
one of the spirits.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
she also in the earlier chapter she talked about the threads of African people. So here we are in church.
Everybody get ready. Call him, call him, call him. Yes, Jesus. Yes, Jesus. Yes, yes,
Go ahead. Yeah.
There it is, right there. See it? See that in the eye. No. If you see the
Yeah.
both of them, you can see you're seeing the same type of practices being done. Right here in the Christian practice, you can even see they don't have as much like I'm using the word control. They don't actually hold the space as well as the Orisha space, right? Like to channel that energy, but they still got a system present. You see he's behind her, his woman is behind him, and you see that
Yeah.
there's the support that's there. He's making sure, right? Like they're like he's not speaking in English anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which is something that happens in West African spiritual practice, is they speak in another language that's not an earthly type language. It's a spiritual language. So the same in the Greek, they call it glossolalia, which they get translated into tongues in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
But that existed in Africa. That idea.
Yeah.
So we do that in our church.
Mm-hmm.
So we see it here. We see it in, now these are the spiritual spaces to do stuff like this. But let's take it out of the space. Let's take it to the streets. Right? So here we go. This is a movie, a documentary called Rise, about some kids in LA. They have not trained in any African anything. That's all you need to know. No African nothing. Except they DNA. And they created this dance form themselves. They didn't learn it from them.
Yeah. Go ahead now. Dinka.
Think about force by tide. Life force.
Dinka.
Watch her.
She just struck. That's what we all been waiting on. Yep.
She has reached
That's
inevitable.
That's what all of us been waiting on.
Now I want to stop it right there. I want to play that again.
Go ahead.
Hear what he says, right? And you can see the moment that it happens. Like the actual moment. He says she was dancing like this. Boom, she gone. She possessed. Right
Yeah. Go ahead now.
It's right there. Undeniable.
Yeah.
And listen, he says, this is what we all been waiting for.
Yeah.
We've come together for this purpose. This is what he's saying. Listen to it.
She just struck. That's what we all been waiting on. Yep.
She has reached.
Everything's all right
That's what
now.
all of us been waiting on.
One of the young men said, she has reached the pinnacle. Now, they've created this. They had a thing called clowning where they would dance with the face paint on, and then some of them took that and created the form called crumping. It's about almost 20 years ago. They created this thing called crumping, which was a form of clowning, but then the crumping turned into this. And so you took these LA, they in LA, these traumatized LA youth who just had all of this raw grief and pain, and then they just took it upon themselves and they created this thing where they started to literally channel the energies and call them together and get possessed. Now, I heard an interview that was done of them. I've only seen it one time. And they asked that young lady, they said, what happened to you? These are white folk, of course. What happened to you in that scene? She said, I caught the Holy Ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I caught the Holy Ghost, right? In a parking lot where they blasting rap music and you dancing and people climbing up the fence and people ripping off their shirts and you got shit. She's exposed and you know what I'm saying? Like, so the beauty of that, you know, that this is what Marimba Ani says here at the end of the chapter. She says the Abibi Man Ba, the child of Africa, is in his or her being, represents the embodiment of the confrontation of the two divergent worldviews, a spiritual ethos inheriting a sacred cosmic worldview forced to adjust to a materialistic society and inhuman circumstance. Then she raised a bunch of questions. We must raise again the question, what happens when the spiritual ethos of a people of African origin is entrapped, injured, abused, raped, and exploited by an oppressive materialistic society, the culture of which seeks to dominate them? Do we lose our integrity? Does our ethos or worldview become distorted so that we no longer are recognizable as African? Or do we indeed become imitation in European? Now here's the point. Or is it possible that a legacy of powerful spiritual conceptions, the African worldview and spiritness, the African Asili, give us the ability to revitalize ourselves in spite of great suffering and imminent devastation? Is it possible that our souls are continually replenished into the universal life force through the connecting life rituals that we recreate together? And so what we are seeing in this video, as I put this image back on the screen, is we are seeing what we replenished into.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Life ritual. They just did it. This is what she calls the ritual drama. Right? Where's the drama? Okay, if you see the wrestling is not a match to kill each other. That's what they're doing.
Right.
This is not to kill each other, to injure each other, to hurt each other. That's not the point. See, in the same dancing here, this is not meant to hurt each other. That's not the point. It's incredibly aggressive. It's incredibly aggressive. The point is not to destroy on a physical sense, right? They might be destroyed. It's not in this realm. They really are co-creating. This is raw. This is raw magic. Straight magic.
And this is what brought fear. When the white man saw this, he could not understand it at all. He knew he could not replicate it. I had the misfortune while I was in college of dancing to, the latest Supremes and Temptations and Smokey Robinson and Four Tops and everything with white people. And I tried to teach these white boys how to dance. And I just couldn't believe you can't feel that? No, they couldn't. And what we're seeing here, I'm just amazed at this. And the intercut with this is Dinka. You see, the African is Dinka. And it's the same thing happening. In fact, one of the things to pay attention to, did you see his face? That look on his face? That is cool. You're supposed to be able to express dynamic energy, but your face is serene.
Wow.
And the African looked at whatever.
If you pay attention to the dancers, a lot of them will do that. They'll be doing something, their face will stay just like normal.
Yeah. Their faces, their faces, like, this is to be expected of such elegance as I possess. And and I'm looking at the way they painted their faces. And back in the 70s, when I first came across these images, oh my God, oh no, you can't do anything like that. Well, this youth are not restricted. They were not born with the restrictions of parents who had been through Jim Crow. And so that this is because in the 50s, no, they wouldn't allow. We used to be on the corner singing, and if it was more than three of us, any not police, any white person, come, y'all move along. Y'all can't be out here like this. You
Right.
see, and so what we're looking at now is that African thrust is here in the hip hop generation.
Right. And
You
like,
see,
here the moment where it strikes her.
yeah, you can look at her face.
I mean,
That was the cool.
right. That's it. Right.
Mhm.
She right there. You know, if I find it again.
And
right.
yeah, you know, look at her. Look, that look like all y'all, you know,
Right. Yeah.
on her face.
You can see it. You know, you can
Yeah.
see it in the face. Woo!
Mhm.
I get goosebumps. And then, of course, as we saw
Yes.
before, the support. Right.
Yeah,
As we saw in the church, as we saw in the E5 practitioner, they're
that's right.
channeling this, right?
Mhm.
As we talked about, you talked about the grit being in the oyster shell and that creating the pearl, the
Mhm.
trauma of these LA young black folk here have created this pearl. Like they
Yeah,
and
that's right.
really,
They
it's
come
really
from the challenge, and this is why I remember when I was a boy, my grandmother, my father's mother,
yeah.
my uncle, her brother James Caldwell had a church, and I used to love going to their church. It was a storefront,
Mhm.
and in the backyard, this is down Newark, New Jersey. I can't remember. I don't know what street it was, but I just went. And in the backyard, when we would get there in the morning, there would be chickens in the backyard. And the kids, we could go and run, chase the chickens and everything. Then had to go inside the church. During the service, there would be singing. It was not like the other churches that I had been to. Um, it wasn't until about 20 years later, I was I was doing a documentary in Philadelphia at Nana Afo. Arthur Hall had a dance company. He
Yeah.
was a con practitioner, and he was hosting one of the most powerful Akan priestesses, Nana Oparabia.
Mm.
She and her husband, Nana Boateng, they had come and they were in Philadelphia about 2 months. I went to a comb. I didn't know it was a comb. It was like a bembe. In Yoruba, it would be like a bembe.
Cool.
And
I've been to a
they
couple.
were singing these songs. And I said, I heard this before. And I couldn't remember where did I hear these songs. And I think 2 or 3 days later, it came back to me at my Uncle Jim church with my grandmother.
What?
And I
At the
remember
home.
being in that church when there would be periods when the women would stand up and fall out and all kind of breaking up the furniture and stuff like this. And that was the spirit, you see.
I should.
And I didn't realize it, but that's where it was. And I did not realize until when my grandmother died. Her children uh, had benefited from her work in spirit, but they was all not raised in it.
Mm.
And there was a dispute at the funeral before the funeral who was going to take the book, her book. And I did not know then what I know now. And I wish I had took it because they said, okay, well, let's just bury it with her.
Oh wow.
About 10, 15 years later, after I got in touch with Oba Funchal Abaitunu, and I came to understand Orisha, that was her so-called libretto, her priest book.
Mm.
And I had thought, well, I wonder if I could go get the body exhumed, and because I wanted to get look now, but I don't have to. I had to get into the culture myself, and I'm looking now, and I'm seeing so many more. When I first got to Baltimore and had gotten deeper into Orisha, a lot of my nationalist brothers, oh no, oh, that's spookism, man. And, oh no, we can't do nothing like that. And basically, they had a Black Panther version of Christianity when it came to what you were going to spiritually practice. And it was easier to recite the principles of Mao Zedong than any kind of African principles. Certainly, let the circle be unbroken with practice, but it was not taught. You
Okay.
see, there
Yeah.
was people because you see there were the the uh, uh, the people who had the what is the eel and the bay at their last name.
Oh, the Moors.
Moorish Americans,
Or yeah, Moorish Science Temple. Yeah, Moorish American.
Moorish Science Temple.
Mm.
Them, Daddy Grace
I
was
said,
another big, and he was like Daddy Grace, Father Divine, and Elijah Muhammad was the same type of prophets
mm,
in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
mm.
And that thrust is what really kept an African thread in the community. I remember going to Father Divine. There was the Divine Lorraine Hotel in Newark, and it was one of the few hotels where Black people could go. You could work in them, but you couldn't have a room. Well, they had a cafeteria, lunchroom. Lord have mercy, huge plate full of good, nutritious, of course, organic food, $1. You see, today it would be $30. But uh, things that were happening back then that were evidence that the African thrust was maintaining, of course, outside of African language, but the way of conducting the relationships among the people and building an institution that would really help people, because you could get a meal like that for 25 cents, you see. And the way the Black people interacted and worked with one another, that even the Northern Jim Crow was not as decapitating as you might imagine, as the white people wanted. There were stores in the North. I was born in the North. Bamberger's was the big Macy's of Bamberger's was the New Jersey version of Macy's.
That's it.
And on Black people, when I was a boy, could not go to the Bamberger's on any day but Thursday. And you could go, and they would, all the Black people, we'd be crowded at the side door, not the front door. You could go inside door, and you could go into the basement. And if you wanted something that Bamberger's carried, and it was on the first, second, or third floor, you had to tell the sales clerk, and they'd have to go up there and get it because you couldn't go up there. Imagine going to Walmart. You could only go to Walmart one day a week. And when you went in there, you could go only to certain departments. This was Northern Jim Crow. And in 67, all of that broke down.
Mm.
And I'm glad to be part of what broke it down. But y'all do not carry. You did not have to unlearn Jim Crow because we didn't teach it to you. It was not necessary. But I look at that spirit, all them people, yeah, they should. I'm finding here in Atlanta, there's a huge African spiritual community. Orisha, Abosom, people in the Kemet theory, and so all of this stuff is happening. But your generation, that this is telling me, we on the way back.
I believe it, Baba. I do. And we're gonna end it there for
Mm-hmm.
today. So we're gonna do chapter 3 next week, which is gonna jump into Maafa and
Yeah,
humanizing circumstance and human response. So
yeah,
I've read this chapter and it's only 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, barely even three, about maybe three and a half pages. But
yeah,
it'd be probably some of the most intense pages we got. So
yeah. And that whole thing about the Ma'afa, because we have to realize that even during the Ma'afa, Ma'at did not go out of effect.
that's
You
that's
see.
true. That's true.
Yeah.
True. That's the beauty. That's the beauty. See, like thinking this way, it even make me feel better about like just the reality in itself. From a wider angle, a wider view. Instead of like writing on all the minutia of all the crazy stuff that's happening right now. Instead,
Mhm.
the bigger view is like, yeah, that things are regenerating and it's in a cycle and it's just a part of cycle. And we will, of course, survive this cycle because we can't die. So
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
take death out the equation. You kind of good.
Yes.
Chanel,
Yeah.
how you doing? You done hung in there with us the whole time. Chanel. I said, yeah, that's good.
Mm.
We appreciate you. You done hung in there. This Baba Adamola. Hold on, I'm gonna end all these recording things. Hold on.